New Norm is brought to you by Winning at Home. I'm Steve Norman. Welcome to the New Norm. Not too long ago, my family was vacationing in Florida, and a good friend of ours invited us to take a peek at the Orlando Magic NBA practice facility. And while we were there, we got to see the player wall. It's an entire wall in a common space in the facility where every single player who's ever suited up for the team has a brick-sized plaque with their name on it. Doesn't matter if they played one game or if they had a Hall of Fame career there, they're on the wall. It's a way to honor every athlete who made the sacrifices required to compete at that level. Now, the Bible has a version of a player wall too. We find it in Hebrews chapter 11. It's people who sacrificed in the name of faith and surrender. Now, the author of Hebrews, we're not exactly sure who it is, only names 19 specific people, but refers to many, many more by implication. We read these verses in Hebrews chapter 11, 32 to 39. And what more shall I say? I don't have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions and quenched the fury of flames and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. Now, I spent some formative years in a charismatic church, and we loved miracles. We loved praying for miracles. We loved hearing about miracles, and we loved these verses. But then the text takes a really intense shift midway through verse 35 that, remember, started with women received back their dead. The very next line, there were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so they might gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went around in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. Again, growing up in a church that prayed for miracles, we skipped over these verses. They did not sound nearly as magical or fun. The writer continues, these were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. The text continues in chapter 12, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, these members of this hall of faith, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you might not grow weary and lose heart. Now, some of these lines sound familiar, right? The one that says, throw off everything that hinders, or let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, or fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. These are verses that get their own coffee mugs, bumper stickers, and locker posters. But Hebrews 12:2, at least the second part of it, does not. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. There are two key characteristics about the cross here. The first is its physical pain, its intention to maximize bodily suffering. But then the other component that we sometimes miss as modern readers is its public shame. I learned recently that Roman citizens had the privilege or the opportunity to, when being executed, die by beheading. It would have been quick, noble, and honorable, but crucifixion would have been slow and humiliating. The criminal who is being sentenced to die in that way would have been stripped naked or nearly naked and then executed in a very public place to maximize their embarrassment and to remind anybody who is passing by that this was the price to be paid for defying the authority of Rome. So Jesus Christ endures not just physical pain, but the emotional, psychological pain of shame. Why? Well, yes, out of love for us, but also for, at least according to the author of Hebrews, for the joy set before him. Now, at Winning at Home, our counselors help people unpack some pretty intense issues: trauma, family crisis, depression. But the most important issues we get to see people set free from is from their shame. Now, remember, guilt is a bad feeling about what I did. Shame is a bad feeling about who I am. Conviction from the Holy Spirit speaks to behavior that needs to be corrected. Condemnation from the enemy of our souls speaks to an identity. And usually it's a negative understanding of identity, that I am worthless, that I am insignificant, that I am at my core unlovable. Jesus finds joy on the other side of sacrifice, which often doesn't make sense to us. We like to think that joy is the result of a life that's marked by comfort or security or recognition or achievement. But Jesus finds joy in emptying himself so that we might be filled and free. The author Craig Groeschel says that sacrifice is giving up something you love for something you love more. I've been reading through the book of Leviticus lately, and in Leviticus chapter 1, God says if an Israelite is making a burnt offering, a sacrificial animal, either from their sheep or from the goats, you're to offer a male animal without defect. That phrase, without defect, appears 18 times in Leviticus and 38 times in the Torah. It's trying to say that if you're going to give God a gift, that gift should cost you something. It needs to be something of value. And anybody who's ever been committed to being a high-performing athlete knows that you've got to make sacrifices. You pass on time with friends or sleep or vacation or comfort in order to compete. Or maybe you're a student and you've got a dream college or grad school you're trying to get into, and you've made sacrifices of time or energy or maybe even relationships in order to achieve that. Or maybe you've had a financial goal when you're saving up to buy something of value to you. And as a result, you're passing on concerts, or you're passing on iced lattes, or you're passing on other weekend outings so that you can get what you want. You're giving up something you love for something you love more. And those pursuits can be right and good if we don't get our identity wrapped up in them. But Jesus doesn't endure the cross for the joy that comes with power, status, glory, or money. His sacrifices are solely made for others. Recently, I got a chance to spend some time in Africa with some members of the Winning at Home team, and we met somebody who's doing some really beautiful ministry there, whose son just graduated from college. And it seems like college graduations in South Africa are totally different than what they look like here in West Michigan. There, when a graduate's name is announced, some of their family members won't just politely applaud, but they'll jump out of their seats and literally start dancing the aisles, not just because they're proud, but because whole families made sacrifices in order for that student to go to school, and now everybody's seeing that sacrifice pay off together. You will usually remember and appreciate the sacrifices that you made for your own dreams and achievements. But here's what I learned the hard way. Most people will never really care about what you achieve, but no one will ever forget the sacrifices you made for them in the name of love. I've been to more than my fair share of funerals lately, at least 3 in the last few months. And when people are offering tributes to those who have passed on, nobody talks about their academic degrees, their net worth, or the marathons that they run. But they talk about how their boss or their mom or their friend made them feel. I think God's going to invite you to make sacrifices in the name of love this week. He's going to call you to lay down something that you love in the moment for someone that you love more. And when he does, say yes, even if it costs you, because there's always joy on the other side of sacrifice. The New Norm is produced and distributed by Winning at Home. Winning at Home is a faith-based nonprofit committed to making individuals, couples, families, and businesses stronger through counseling and coaching. For more information, visit winningathome.com. I'm your host, Steve Norman. Thanks for listening.